Hello, universe. Welcome to Pickathon Podcast, episode 22. I'm your host, Zale Schoenborn. I'm also the founder of the Pickathon Music Festival, and this is a podcast about discovery. Mostly kind of creative journeys it's turning into, and just kind of stories, things you maybe didn't think about, and how that inspires people's lives, other people's lives, their own lives, and we're just going to kind of dive into it. And my guest today is Nat Myers, who's kind of not only an amazing blues artist that you probably couldn't guess where he's from or how old he is. And I won't spoil anything by just hearing his music, because you'll think that was this is recorded pre-World War II. But what's super cool about it is we're kind of from the same place. And it's got me thinking about growing up and how that influences where you're at and where I'm at. I like to talk about that a lot because I think that's kind of a core part of creative stories. But in this case, I don't think I talked too much about where I grew up. I've mentioned Kentucky, but I grew up in a small town just south of Covington called Beechwood. And actually it was not the town, that's the school. It's called Fort Mitchell. And there's a bunch of little towns, kind of you'd think we're really we're kind of a suburb of Covington, which is kind of like a suburb of Cincinnati. We're all kind of one big place. But when you kind of get about 3 miles where I'm at or so, kind of down Dixie Highway. So Dixie Highway is like the old highway. And then there's 75 that goes right down and that hits hits in where they built the super highway. But Dixie Highway goes all the way to Florida, all the way to Michigan. It's interesting. I was one of those kids that, I don't know, I didn't have a lot of music background growing up. I actually shared something with Nat. We're both trumpet players. I stuck with the trumpet from 4th to 12th grade, and was one of those band kids. It's kind of a rough for me. Cincinnati, it's weird. I always say people are super able to create their own fun there because it's kind of a tough place in a weird way. It's not a beloved city. People don't travel there. It's not Cincinnati actually, on the bones of it, was insanely awesome. It's if you look back, it was called the Paris of America forever. And they kind of carved it up and screwed it up hardcore with the interstates. They really desecrated that city in terms of how it functioned as super duper pedestrian. And it wasn't so part of my life like that when I was growing up there, because I was in this small little town, Fort Mitchell, and we had most of the houses had woods all over the background. And I wasn't a cool kid. I wasn't the kid that was on the football team. I was just telling you I was in the band. That kind of screws you up hardcore in Kentucky. I was the nerd kid who invented his own fun, playing Dungeons and Dragons, computer games. And I was but I wasn't unhappy. We had a pool, we just had friends. And before, when I woke up and figured out the cool cliques and I remember I was in chemistry class sophomore, and I'm looking around, looking at these football players and how all the they were getting all the love from the young ladies, and I was man, I'm done. I'm out. I'm skipping this whole I didn't even figure out what I needed to do until now. And so I'm just gonna hang with my friends and I'm just gonna be happy. I actually have that to remember, and I'm just not cool enough. I can't transcend this high school kind of experience. But the cool thing about Kentucky in Cincinnati area is friend groups are strong, and I know they're strong everywhere, but there's just something we always used to say, we could have fun in a concrete bunker. We didn't need a lot. And it's true. My brother Eric was hardcore skateboarder. I wasn't a skateboarder, but I was I always made fun, man. And it was it kind of carried me into how I could survive anything. And I really thought about these incredible friends that I've met there, and I've started to reconnect. One of my really good friends, Tom Miller, he's recent, has passed away, and his daughter came out this year and was able to come out and spend time at Pickathon in memory of her dad. And because his dad had this incredible time, and was one of the last things we were able to do together was him to come out there. but we grew up together, just had this, just so tight, so connected experience with my friends. And there's just too many to mention. But it's cool, man, to think about, and how did music really come in there for me? Like, I feel like I was always listening to music, like playing music. My dad was super into like bluegrass, and we just listened to it all the time on the front porch. There's a crazy amount of woods in those neighborhoods, and as kind of maybe it's kind of growing out now, but like you go into my backyard, I had an acre woods. Other people had an acre woods, and then the creeks, which are kind of the sewers, but they're really creeks. Sometimes they were clean. They went everywhere. You could follow these creeks underneath roads. I mean, we were out running police, having fireworks wars. Like, we were doing just like kind of country stuff in the city. And, like, it was a cool place. And then, I don't know if I attribute like it was like that kind of like grit and sense of like place, and just the tightness of the friends, the real friends, and even the friends that were cooler than me, the jocks. Like, we all kind of ended up friends. Like, there's a lot of gravity to Northern Kentucky. You don't necessarily escape there very easily, because it's kind of a cool place to grow kids up. Like, you can safe and they can run around, and like, I get it. I go back every once in a while, but it's been a long time. And I lived right smack across from Beechwood High School, which was a first through 12. And I went to that school from first grade till I graduated, and, eventually ended up down in University of Kentucky. But that whole like core of my life, and is just like who I am. I know it. And I know like all the things, that the resilience I have, like the ability to kind of just like look at absolute disaster of like in a face and not really worry about it. Like, I'm kind of referring to like, I've always had a day job because I knew that festival wasn't going to be, but it was like running things that are your dream. You're going to be in times where it's just like, this is impossible. We're never going to make it, but you just, I don't know, back in that kind of like Kentucky, Northern Kentucky. I'm like, oh, we're going to overcome, like, and I don't know, like, that's like feels like it's a common thread. And I love that. Hats off, Northern Kentucky, Norky, as we used to call it. Covington, Cincinnati.
I say Northern Kentucky, and people are like North Kentucky, and it's like, no, it's Northern Kentucky, man. It's not North Kentucky.
And welcome, Nat.
So heed my carnival cry. Will I heed my...
Let's talk about it. Tell me about Northern Kentucky for you.
Oh man, I mean, I feel like that was almost all encompassing. Like, do you need me here, man? Like, that was, I think
No,
that hit
I
the
mean,
nail on the head.
I'm
Truth
so
told.
curious what your hardcore journey was in our little, our town.
Well, let me tell you, man. The one place I ever been strip searched for weed was in Fort Mitchell, man.
Yes.
Right next to the police station, man. For a gram of weed, and I will say, it was a Monty Python moment. I don't got, I don't know. I got mixed opinions about police, generally
Yes.
speaking, but the Fort Mitchell police can kiss my ass. Truth told, they try to find a gram of weed on me. They put their fingers on my butthole, all this kind of stuff, and
Oh
we got
my
back and
God.
and we got back in the car, and I remember I pulled it back out from the seat cushion. And I was just like, these jackasses, man. And I remember that one of the cops, he was flipping his flashlight at me, and he was like when he found out I was going to University of Louisville, he's like, all right, we don't need to see you around here, college boy. And I was like, bro, I live a mile down Buttermilk Pike. Like, I'm going to be back here tomorrow. You know what I mean? I got to go to Kroger like everybody else.
Yes.
And so it's just like, I think, I don't know. I think you hit the nail on the head in a number of different aspects. That feeling of, I don't know, entrapment, but also desire to get outside. I think that
Mhm.
was such a universal feeling for me and my friends. And also kind of like the grittiness of, when my friend Clay Meyer was shot and killed in Newport, Kentucky for an ounce of weed. And
Damn.
that still strikes me very deeply. And at the same time, it's a wonderful place, I think, to grow up your kids. it's a wonderful place to kind of grow up. Generally, I went to Dixie Heights High School, which this don't mean nothing to nobody who ain't from there. But Beechwood weren't really kind of our rival. The
No.
one place that really pissed off Dixie Heights kids was Covcath. Man, Covcath, we did not like. There was a general
Yep.
animosity between Covcath and basically the rest every other school.
Every other
Truth told,
school.
yeah.
Every
Truth
other
told.
school. And Covcath is like kind of like the wealthy, more private. Was it private? It's private, right? It's private school.
Yeah, but there's shit kickers over there too, man. Like some of my friends who got expelled from Covcath and come to Dixie, and you're just like, oh, like
Hmm.
like yeah, y'all are no good wherever you wind up.
Yeah, you have to tell them what's your mascot, dude. So this is what's so crazy about where we grew up too, right?
Oh, Bubba, dude. Oh my gosh. So our mascot is the gray and red Colonel, still to this day.
Yes, the
Um,
Confederate like Colonel, right? Like, and no,
yeah,
without
not
that,
not not the KFC kind. Yeah, no,
no.
it's like some deep stuff. But funny enough, there was a KFC right next to Dixie Heights, and that was a place where I don't know what y'all had over in Beechwood, but that's where people would go
Skyline,
smoke before school.
Skyline,
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay, yeah, no,
right next to Kroger's, right there.
right. Everybody would smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody would drink like
Yep.
before class,
Oh
after
yeah.
class. That's where you fought. It's
Yep.
just like the KFC was kind of I guess kind of the epicenter of the entire social life for a lot of people. At least if you were like on the ground. But
And wasn't that also like, wasn't there was a mall, McAlpin's? Wasn't it like there was like, it was, what was that
the
mall?
Crestview,
Yeah.
the Crestview, it got turned into Crestview Town Center, dude. Funny thing about that mall, I mean, I used to skate a lot too, man, and I remember they were tearing that mall down to build the Crestview Town
Mm-hmm.
Center. They kept like half of it, but they tore down the other and they made it a strip mall. It was like an old fashioned mall, like where you
Yes.
walked inside,
Yep.
and it was just like it was. I mean, it was hard times over there. I think there was like two stores
Oh
in
yeah.
the entire mall. It was depressing, but I remember like when we was little because we didn't have like me and my friends we really didn't have no money from day to day. So I remember when they were like starting to close the things down, we had hopped in, we got into the we got into the pools, like the water pools, and I remember we spent like 2 hours collecting all the change out of these water holes, and we got chased. I remember we got chased off by the security. And my friend Bobby, he had those cargo shorts with the cargo pockets,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, the guy was like, "What are y'all doing?" And he's like running downstairs, and it's like he's got like gold kilos in his side pockets, just like clunk clunk clunk, like going down the stairs. But I remember that same night though, he lived off Dudley on the intersection with Dixie.
Yeah.
And I remember, yeah, we went over to the Pizza Hut over there and we bought like 4 pizzas or some
Oh
shit like
yeah.
that
I
with the
used to
money.
work at that Pizza
And
Hut by
change, dude. Yeah.
Kmart, right? By
Kmart, yeah, man.
I worked at that Pizza Hut. I got kicked out of that Pizza Hut. I lost my job for taking a dare and taking a case of Bud from like a pallet of Budweiser somewhere in Villa Hills, and some old lady across saw me like snatch that, and I got back and they're like, go return it, and I was like, oh, but I was just messing around. He had a pallet of Budweiser. Who's he gonna miss a pallet of
Lit,
Budweiser?
what, which spot, man? Because like me and my friends, my good friend Clay lived in the trailer parks right next to. We called them the warehouses, like
Mm-hmm.
as skateboarders. We called them the warehouses
Yeah.
off Mineola Pike, and they had, I think it was a Budweiser distribution center. But what
Mm-hmm.
they would do, my friend Evan, I mean, he super redneck dude, figured this out real quick. They would apparently like if they broke one bottle in the crate, they would throw the whole crate out.
Oh
And
wow.
so we would go to this dumpster like on weekends, and we jump in the dumpster and get all this get all this liquor. But they caught on eventually, and I remember I went with Evan, my friend Justin, and we hopped out. I remember our friend Katie and Tommy dropped us off, and we got caught. They like pulled the F-150 up in front of the thing. We were like we were hiding underneath the stairwell, and I remember Evan just was just like, well, boys, like, we just got to run. And we ran through the trailer parks, and we were waiting there, waiting for our friends to pick us up. And, like, I don't know if you know where the water district is over in Bill Hills off
I
Amsterdam.
do.
Like,
Yeah.
it
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
curls down towards right off Route 8 there.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
Totally.
so the trailer park's at the top of the hill. We didn't know this at the time. You know, our geography was, like, defined by the roads. But I remember seeing the cops. It was like one of those moments where you're like, you're looking at your friend, you see what he's looking at, and you turn around, and then you look back, and he's already gone, and you're just like, oh shit. And so he just bolted down the stairs, and we ran straight down this valley wall, and we were just running real fast. And we got to the bottom. I think we paranoidly thought they had dogs. Like obviously we were just shit kickers. Like
Exactly.
they're not gonna stick canines on our asses. But we got to the bottom, and I remember we were like, where the fuck are we? And we just kept on walking. I remember Evan like some comedy Tarzan moment, just like pulled like a bunch of the undergrowth, and we saw the water district. And he looked back at us, and he was like, "Boys, we're home." And we walked up Amsterdam all the way to the fucking Ameristop, man, and like just wound up chilling there for Tommy and Katie. And Justin was so mad. He was just so mad. He felt like Tommy and Katie set us up because they bolted. I mean, if we were them, we would have bolted too.
I had
they
so
skipped out so quick.
many of those same experiences, like growing up in. I mean, basically, the police. There's not that much crime, in a weird way. There is crime, there is serious, but like they're more interested in the teenagers. They're way more like, and especially in Fort Mitchell,
no doubt.
like all their whole job was just to like catch teenagers or like. I was like, don't police like have a job? Like they literally, I felt like it was them against us at all points of all time. Anytime we had any plan, they were just out patrolling for us. So yeah, it's kind of weird that
it's kind of incestuous because like I remember when I got strip searched, it was so funny when the cop pulled up me and my friend Justin over. I got out of the car. I used to play Pee Wee Spartan football. And this dude, the dude who pulled me out of the car was covered like head to foot, had bought like every single thing from the catalog, like had the Spartan cap, it was raining out, so he had the poncho, he had the Spartan poncho on. And I was just like, I remember getting out of the car and just be like, I'm pretty sure this dude was my coach, like the guy who like got me down.
You didn't use the card.
Me,
you didn't
doubt.
use the card. I'm like, hey,
no, I did. No, I tried to, but it was like, no, man, like this guy wasn't giving me no breaks. But I mean, growing like Kentucky, like Northern Kentucky, is such in kind of a deeper way as well. I think a lot of people look at Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati as like he's kind of saying sort of a passing through sort of place. But I think especially like if you're playing music, man, you can go up to Columbus or you can go down to Lexington and Louisville. And I don't want to speak for Northern Kentucky music scene generally speaking, but it's kind of there ain't too many venues left, at least on this side of the river. There's Madison Theater, there's Southgate House Revival, but in terms of like, there's some hopping stuff down in Ludlow, just like a quarter mile from my house that people were telling me about. And it's like, I had no idea what was going on. But I think there's also this, it's kind of a passing through place, but the Covington police, they got on, their motto is the gateway to the South. If you look at the deeper history of America, so much has happened at these crossroads up here in Northern Kentucky.
Yeah.
Whether or not it be the climaxes of books of actual narratives of enslaved folks escaping from inequity, and I think that history just kind of continues to pervade. I think the North it continues to be a petri dish for a lot of things. I'm not trying to make this political, but
it's kind of like that Northeast meets Midwest meets South. I'm not joking. I really do think that is the intersection.
It really is, man. It's really funny. Like when I meet other folkies from just around. Like I got really close with this. I really love this country singer, and I'm like ride or die with this fella now named Logan Halstead.
Oh yeah, tell me. Yeah, you like that guy?
I love that guy. And
go ahead, tell me. I want to know about him.
Yeah, he was like, no, it's just funny. Whenever I bring up around him, then when someone's like, where are you from? Like, Covington, Kent County, Kentucky. And he always turns over to him. He's like, don't let him lie to you like that. He's actually from Ohio. You know what I mean?
Oh.
just ragging.
I know.
Let him do it, man. But I feel like, a lot of my friends say they're from Cincinnati because it's like kind of an area. But man, I don't claim Cincinnati at all. I like Cincinnati, but there's definitely a porousness between the border, but I mean, like where I'm from, like up in this part of the country, it's Republican to the bone. It's in many different ways, and it's kind of a one party system over here. And I think that's completely different than the politics up in Cincinnati. Even though I think Cincinnati suffers from a kind of a deeper sort of, the conversation about gentrification that like even exists when I was over in Happy Valley do not exist
Right.
within the context of the politics of Cincinnati. I was talking with some person, like they were like, they seem to try to preserve things up there. I was like, what Cincinnati you talking about, dude? Because Cincinnati, I know, is two of the Democratic councilors got in trouble for corruption for
Yeah.
selling over the Rhine, downriver to developers
Oh my
and
God.
pushing all the black folkies onto the west. They're trying to push black people out of Cincinnati until they're in Indiana. You know what I mean? It's just
I
it's
know
really
it.
weird. So
It is so weird because that area. I mean, first of all, like yeah, the history of that music wise. I mean, if you look way back in Cincinnati, I know it was Covington, like King Records, right? I'm sure you know about King Records, like
King Records, dude, the Cincinnati Cotton Club, it was one of the first integrated venues,
it
in the entire
in
country.
the
So it's
entire country, and it spilled over to
yeah,
Bellevue and Ludlow and Covington. I mean,
right,
it
yeah,
was
man,
hopping, and I mean, you look at the music that came out of King Records. It
yeah,
really,
man,
like goes back to like when you want to like go even far back as hillbilly music, right? That's where it started. Like that was the heart and
yeah, man,
soul of music. It wasn't New York, wasn't anywhere, it was really Cincinnati was like
yeah,
Sid.
man,
Yeah, he was putting all that out, and it was cool. Like I mean, later a lot of blues came out of there. James Brown started on King Records, which is kind of mind
right,
blowing, right? So
yeah,
our town had some shit going. With like culturally, it's not like it was a dead, but yeah, there's just something happened like in the 40s to like it doesn't get along well. You know what I mean? It feels like since every town's fighting with everyone in some
Well,
weird
dude, it was
way.
funny. I was talking with Anthony Simpkins over at Gems on VHS. He came up here and done a video with me about, I don't know, probably about a year and a half ago. And the
Great video.
Roebling was closed for yeah, that is what it is right on the Roebling there. But I think what was funny about that thing was like they had shut the Roebling down for a long time, and then when he posted the video, I forgot what he said. I'm paraphrasing him. We love Tony, but he said something like, we wanted to go to the Rust Belt in Northern Kentucky and Southern Ohio and like see what was going on there. And I was like, huh, like I never really thought about it like that, but I guess there is a lot of rust around here. Yeah, like for
Yeah.
sure. You know what I mean?
It's just kind of like you don't
So
even think about it because it's just part of like our like
yeah,
and you're just kind of like surviving. I mean, but again, underneath it all, there's just good people and like I can already tell like one thing we share that it's kind of slipping out here in Oregon is like we love to like tell stories and talk. Like it is competitive storytelling in Northern Kentucky. If you grew up there,
yeah.
you totally know what I'm talking about.
I do, man. I got some friends who are always the center of the party, man, because they're just the best storytellers.
I always told them the rules were like you got a group of friends, anything you can talk. They got to be like 30% can be kind of like fudged a bit, but if there's a pause and somebody loses their rhythm, you can take over. Like you can like jump in, and so that was like the kind of competition. How long can you keep it going?
Yeah. No, so I mean, it's just kind of like that comedy ethos. You know what I mean? Like I always heard like comedians like the, structured jokes and things like that. Like a lot of people kind of learn that inherent self. Like we had this one, like I had this friend named Mike Banks. He's still up here, but just like an absolute ham. Just knows how to continuously escalate a theme.
Oh yeah.
Fractalize an idea into something just completely strange and curious and engaging as well.
Entertaining,
Because
right?
right, it's
And
just
I feel like that's like a part of like the dysfunction we grew up in and around, like that's the kind of thing you needed to do to kind of like make it feel rewarding. It's like it had to be local, kind of connected. And I mean,
yeah.
like where did you learn to like where did you learn to play guitar? So like because I think you started on trumpet, right? But you didn't like trumpet, is that right?
No, man. Yeah, I weren't too big on trumpet, man. I think, I looked at y'all band folks and I was just definitely like, I don't know if this is my crowd over here. But
Yeah,
it was more like, I mean, it wasn't because like I was a jock. I definitely got bullied in school a bunch.
you're more on the
Until
skateboard side, right? Like that's like the other
I
big.
started skateboarding a lot, and my skateboarding friends showed me what true friendship was. They
Yeah.
really showed me what, if it boils down to it, friendship means like like being willing to drop a hat, throw down at somebody who's insulting your friend,
Oh
and
yeah, that's
just people, and like like once I started hanging out with my friends, because a lot of them were older than me too, and like people really stopped fucking with me because they knew the people I was hanging out with were spitfires,
yeah.
and that if you were talking with me, it's an insult to them, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's like they're not there's going to be no hesitation there in terms of being able to like force the moment. I had friends like that, and just generally speaking, though, that confrontation kind of went around. Like throwing rubber balls at cars while they're driving by just
Yeah.
for the nihilistic thrill of it,
Yes,
right? I think there's,
we did that
yeah.
too.
So I hung out with some some amazing cats growing up, man, and
And you actually my brother, right? Did you meet my brother Eric? Did
we
you?
did meet. No, it cracked me up when he said y'all were from Fort Mitchell. I was like, honestly, like I thought to myself, I was like, no shit, man, this is a good time over here. Like, no wonder somebody from Northern Kentucky threw it up together, man.
He's a huge skateboarder. He's a huge, and like I know you probably have some intersecting friends. I don't know if you got a chance to like figure that out, but
No,
Eric,
we ain't.
yeah, he's still skating, and he's been it's that he comes from the exact same culture and his friends and still living his life from kind of that perspective, like just like this
Hmm.
loyalty to these friends and this kind of code and just like sense of like being an respectful, and people should be respectful back, and you call them out if they're not, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
like you can call it. So it's
Yeah,
cool.
man, dude. I had the pleasure of being able to be on tour with G Love and Chuck Treese. This absolutely marvelous pro
Wow.
skateboarder and amazing drummer. I'm sure you heard of him.
Yeah.
I remember him just talking when he learned I was a skater. And like once he learned I was kind of like on the same. I feel like that there is something. It's the same. It's a camaraderie. Like, people got their acknowledgement and all that kind of stuff. This is way deeper here. It's like
Yeah.
there's an ethos behind
Yeah.
skateboarding towards
Mm-hmm.
punk music, towards
Mm-hmm.
all that. And I remember, Chuck just being able to drive with him alone sometimes, just being like, the more skateboarders who get in this game, the more skateboarders are getting all different avenues of life. He's like, the better things are going to be.
Uh-huh.
He's like skateboarder mentality and I definitely abide that. I mean, it's just like, I think a lot of like I definitely come from, and maybe it was like this when you was growing up too. The big
Yeah.
music up in North Kentucky, man, was punk hardcore.
Yeah,
Um,
SS20, like
yeah, dude.
there's like a lot of like old school bands, punk bands and hardcore.
Frankel Project. Did you ever listen to Frankel Project? That might be a little
No,
like
no.
outside your time, or the dopamines. I mean,
Dopamines, yeah.
down Louis. Yeah, the dopamines. Oh my, dude, dopamine still, man. My friend Sammy K is just like, oh yeah, like I work in the kitchen with Johnny or something like that. I'm just like,
Yeah.
that's just so goofy to me, man. Because I used to go to these dudes' shows and like get their records. I was just like, they seemed untouchable. You know what I mean? There's such a crossroads when it comes to punk music up in North Kentucky, Cincinnati. I mean, you got like the hardcore punk, you got the
Mm-hmm.
grindcore, you got the one
Mm-hmm.
of the big things up in North Kentucky that at least I was kind of not, I wasn't part of it, but like the straight edge was a really popular movement as well when
Yeah.
I was growing up.
Yeah.
A lot of straight edge crews.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's, just that mentality. I think looking back on it, it's curious. I mean, I love to see, I know there's kind of getting this new wave of, this kind of second generation sort of, people kind of coming into the scene. To me, I think, looking back on it, it was predominantly male dominated. It was predominantly very misogynistic, and it was
Oh yeah.
very alpha, and in a very toxic way, but also in this funny way too. Because like you go to a show over to Mad Frog, and if you were smoking, because you could smoke cigarettes in the Mad Frog, but if you were smoking at a hardcore show, like straight edge kids would come up to you and break your cigarettes in your face, just like again that nihilistic thrill of like, all right,
Yeah.
like you want to hoe down, partner, like let's do it, right? And it's just like I always think, that's just like that's prevailing. I definitely got my ass kicked growing up. I think that's North Kentucky. I feel like getting your ass kicked. That's part about growing up too,
That's
and taught me a
funny.
lot of lessons. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean I can totally, I think in the style of blues, like punk is underneath that, blues is kind of like is
Oh,
the
bro,
old punk, right? It
dude,
is.
it's the punkest shit you can be doing, man. No offense to everybody doing their own thing, but I think old country blues ain't nothing
Yeah.
punker in my opinion, man. Yeah.
Yeah, grit and soul and just like that punk is just like is it it's like it speaks to me, it like reaches in you. You know, punk does that in that kind of visceral way, like the kind of grit and soul of like the blues does it, but it even goes deeper. It just kind of pulls out your freaking, you know, out of you
Yeah, man.
when you connect to it, you know. And I can, you know, what's
Yeah.
cool about hearing you like sing is like you're feeling it. You know what I mean? Like Lee Fields told me this great line. Is like, um, you know, I'm like singing the emotion. I'm singing what people feel. Like I'm singing the feeling, right? You know what I mean? And I love
Yeah.
that idea that you're just like, you know, it's not like you're copying it. There's nothing. It's kind of like it's coming out from really deep place, which is the
I
only way you can
appreciate that,
do
man.
that.
Much obliged. If I had a hat off, I'd tip it to you. I appreciate that, man.
It's the same with like Tyler, right? Like you mentioned, I heard you mention Tyler Logan. Like those guys, they're not singing blues, but they're singing that kind of like, you know, there's some deep place that when it comes out, it freaking is awesome. You've like obviously kind of connected with the community there of Kentucky musicians. You mentioned
Oh
like
yeah.
with SG Goodman. Like, what are you thinking about? Like, how
Yeah,
did?
but I think the one thing SG said it best. I don't want to quote SG this whole time, but I was blown away by how just off the cuff truistic some of the things she was saying. Well, I spoke with her, Silas House, and Kelsey Walden, and her and Kelsey I think had a really, I mean, just had a great point. You know, Silas was like, "Yo, people starting to pay attention to Kentucky." But I think
Mm-hmm.
SG, and I'm paraphrasing here, was just like, no, it's like, right? Like, it's always been popping over here. It's just like people are starting to pay attention to more than just the one offs. They're paying attention to the
Yeah,
women from Kentucky as well, right? Like, a lot of women
which
in
is
Kentucky
super cool.
are getting, I think, getting their time of day. And I hope they keep getting, they get a full week and month and year out of this. And I think,
Yeah.
it's definitely there's so much great music happening. As somebody who plays blues music or kind of like looks at it, it's sort of, I feel like I got lucky because I will say it definitely seems to be a very competitive scene, generally speaking. I was just down at Americana Fest, and it was such a wonderful time being able to see so many musicians I've developed these relationships with over these past years, or musicians I've admired that I've always wanted to meet, or I only know through the internet. But if I was outside looking in, try to get into it, it's also very intimidating because
Oh yeah.
the community of people, particularly in Kentucky, is just so. I mean, just I've got nothing but love for the people who have given me opportunities and just are just great friends of mine. And it just so happens that they work in the same music and fields, and and that's one of the cool things, man. I feel like a lot of musicians I meet, they ain't asked nobody for nothing. They haven't gone somewhere to shake hands with nobody. Out of the sheer brilliance of what they're doing, and out of the sheer empathy that they're able to create and hang with people, is really like the thing that's brought them the opportunities. Right? It's kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You build it, and they will come
It's
kind of mentality. And I think that's one of
I
the
mean, it's camaraderie too. Like it's not like a competition. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like people are like helpful, and I mean, we like so. Were you playing in gigs? Like where were you playing? Like when you started like learning like blues? Like where do you play it in Northern Kentucky? Was it busking or what was it?
Well, man, so true told, I'll tell you my full story or, a bit of it here. I think, for a long time I wanted to be a poet. So I didn't play nothing for a while. And I moved down to Louisville for I think something like 8 years. I lived down in Louisville. I never played a gig there. I'm playing with Nick Shoulders coming up here in November. And that's going to be the first time I ever played Louisville.
Wow.
But I think, I kind of got my real, like, I'd always played back home, but my first gig that was ever given to me was at this place called The Listening Room up in Cincinnati by Jay Skaggs. I don't know if you heard about him, but I highly recommend his music.
Mm-mm.
He's a phenomenal player, phenomenal human being, generally speaking. He's down home as they come, but he's from up here too. And there's Evan McMillan. Jeremy Pinnell's been popping off real hard over here. I don't know if you
Oh
listen to
yeah.
his stuff. Yeah, over in
Mm-hmm. Oh
Southgate.
yeah.
And oh man, dude, I tried seeing him over the station and down in Nashville. And there was a line out the door, and oh, I was like, good for
Hats
him, but
off.
bad for me, man. Yeah, no, it's just like I ain't getting into this show, but yo, props, man. It seems like he's doing good. People had their ear, and I think I don't know. There's just so much good music kind of coming out of Kentucky generally. As a blues player, I moved up to New York one time, and I had gone to the new school for a semester, and I wound up selling weed on the back of a bicycle. This is before it was legal. This was probably about 6 years ago. I had some close calls. Like, I almost got doored a couple times, or I did get doored a couple times. And I remember one of our workers, he got pistol whipped up in the Bronx, and things were getting like a little heady, and I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, I think I need to find a new bread and butter. You know what I mean? And I was doing okay at the time. So I just started telling myself, I was like, I'd seen buskers on the street. I'd always wanted to busk, man, because I think when it comes to a concept of I think troubadour is an overused term, but the concept of what a poet means is, to me, it's performative. It's a performative art.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, buskers, particularly buskers of the old time or the bluegrass tradition or the blues tradition, were like the closest thing to me that kind of struck that Homeric epic quality that I've always loved in poetry itself. And I think, like back in the day, to be called a poet, to call yourself a poet, not just in some PR stuff like I've been promoted as, to call yourself a poet, you had to recite the entire Odyssey by heart. Like, somebody bringing up a line and you being able to recite that line on the top to earn. I was just hanging out with my friend Rory to earn what was called the epithet, the epaulet
Mm-hmm.
of poet,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think a lot of those people like out on the block who are actually cutting their teeth doing this the old fashioned way, like they're the ones who are earning that epaulet. And I think it's proven true also for the kind of music that we're being presented with, whether it's Lost Dog Street Band
Mm-hmm.
or Sierra Farrell, or
Mm-hmm.
there's so many people who come from, I think in the past called hoboing, but more so the travelers, generally speaking, living that lifestyle. The power and the quality of the music coming out of the folks who have really lived the itinerant, the rambling lifestyle that's spoken about in
Mm-hmm.
songs,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is really dominating right now. And I think it partially comes just, out of, at least an Americana roots blues scene, comes out of that, maybe that obsessive compulsive desire within the genre itself, or the genres, for the capital A authenticity.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I think that's one of the deep things, just like the while and that isn't to say like confessionary. I'm sure there's a lot of people who like saying personal poems, but I think of like Willie Carlisle or
Oh
um
yeah, from the heart, from the heart, from like the source. Like they're close. I actually been noticing this too, and it's actually not just kind of like all those root styles, but it's kind of creeping in to what's considered kind of cool music, indie rock. Like I don't know if you listen to MG Lenderman or Wednesday out of Asheville, but they're taking the same stuff, making it a little more electric, but it's the same place. They're coming from that same place.
dude, and even in like a certain way, even a certain way, like the collaborations with Noah Khan and Post Malone, and I think
Mm-hmm.
those are very much the
Mm-hmm.
same vein. Oliver Anthony, for as many opinions are thrown around to him. I spoke with Benjamin Todd, and I definitely agree with him. Like one thing
Oh,
that pissed,
Benjamin, love Benjamin.
right, like Benjamin's like that's a true folk song, whether you like it or not. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like that he's an actual folk singer, and I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a that I think there's a deeper indication there generally for how the politics going to be in the next year, which is just like I don't like when I like discussion of politics within music itself. I think that's honestly one of the only places I can tolerate hearing it. But it's
Yeah.
I think at the most part, it also gives me a little fear and trembling, because it's like, man, we're a year and a half off from a general election here, and I'm sure it's just going to keep getting rowdier and rowdier, and the way that the politic is inserting its friction into the larger conversation, is going to continue to happen coming up. And who knows, for better for worse, you get a song like "Try It from a Small Town," and then you get a counterpoint such as "In Your Love" by Tyler Childers, and then you get another counterpoint, right, with a song
Mm-hmm.
like "Richmond North of Richmond." And I think
Yeah.
there's like there's an ongoing conversation right now. I think that's pretty heady, and you can see it in certain ways happening over at Americana Fest. I ain't gonna be shy about this right now, Zale. Like my label. when Tried in a Small Town came out, you know what the number one blues album was that, those next couple of weeks?
What was it?
It was Rich White Honky Blues by Hank Williams Jr. And you know why? And you know why, man? It's because of the fact that people were referencing the Jason Aldean song, and a lot, the deeper cut folks in that scene were just like, "Oh, Bocephus already did this 20 years ago." You know what I mean? It's like,
I know.
and so people are like, "Oh, what they talking about?" So it to me, there, and again, like I feel like I don't want to put my label on blast here, but to promote this fish fry, which they called a community event down there, they used a picture of Dan Auerbach and Kid Rock laughing, and to me, that's just the wrong politic, and it's very reactionary.
It is, and it's like tip into the majority, which is tricky down there.
Yeah, it's tipping to the majority, but it does it. In my opinion, I'm saying it here and here now. It does a disservice to the non-binary and queer folks in East
Fuck
Nashville
yeah.
who look at that dog whistle of a fella and they say to
Mm-hmm.
themselves, "I ain't welcome there." So, like, how dare them call that a community fish fry? And in a deeper
Mm.
sense as well, man. It's like it, people are giving like benefit of the doubt to the whole situation, but I know from a fact that like Reaganomics trickled down from on top, and
Yeah.
clearly somebody who's leading this whole thing over my label is completely out of touch with reality.
That's the weird thing. Like you'll never see that kind of where I live
No.
usually in terms of like music. You'll see it in politics. People will do it, but they don't. So it's like it's like trying to have your cake and eat it too. It's like, oh, we're gonna make this music that appeals to everyone, but it also can be kind of progressive. You can't be both. You know what I
No,
mean?
man,
You
dude,
can't.
it's an insult. I was just hanging out with my friend Rory, and he was like, "I can't believe that shit happened when they also put out a record called Yellow Peril." I'm honestly insulted. Truth told, man. I
Oh man.
got a lot of stuff on my plate.
And
Uh,
what's that I'm hearing though is like that's like that what we're just talking about. Like you're gonna call it when you see it. That's where we're from. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you're just gonna let it go and slide. No, this needs to be called out, right? Like that's like I agree with you.
yeah. Well, it's just like it's this kind of thing where I'm through with gatekeeping, man. I'm really done with the reason why people don't say nothing is because the fella's rich and the fella's a
Hmm.
good producer and he makes good sounds. And if you're working with him, you don't want to lose that opportunity. You don't want to get blackballed. You don't want to whatever. My records
Right.
come out, and the fact on the ground is that the majority of people who gotten back to me also agree, also within the label itself, are all thinking, "What the hell?" You know what I mean? But it's like
Uh,
it is what it is. And I think I'm just like, yeah, I just want to be honest with you, Zale, because truth told, on the behalf of other people, I've kind of been lying through my teeth to a number of journalists, fucking up their journalistic
hmm.
ethos, thinking that stuff like this happened. And hey,
Yeah.
I can't knock people, but at the same time, apparently, Kid Rock didn't show up to the fish fry. Jeremy
No.
Albino and Cat Clyde were at the fish fry. I'm not gonna hold
Mm.
that against them. Simultaneously, to me, it's a slap in the face to all those artists and artists who don't get up and say this was messed up, which is basically nobody.
Hmm.
To me, it's cowardly, and I
It
get
is.
I get it, and it boils down to it's fine. And honestly, I think a lot of people, a dude over in England reached out to me. He's like, "What's the whole Kid Rock Bud Light thing?" I told him it's just like Google's a hell of a drug, brother.
It kills me. It kills me. Like we have the same. There's the same thing. Like if you want to do something that becomes successful, sometimes you have to like do something you don't like. And I'm like, and that for in the festival world, it's just like you got to book all the bands that draw and that are popular, not the bands that are like the essence of their music world or have something to say or like
Yeah,
most of those bands are dudes, white dudes, and like if you want to like mix it up and make it like, hey, no, there's all these perspectives, and they're all, and you need to hear it, and like the fact that you have to like pander uh kills me. I don't think I want to do it if I have to pander. You know what I mean? I don't think
yeah.
and I don't think you have to. Like Pickathon for us, like we're like the northern. I'm putting it all together. Like we've survived being hated because we were not pure enough of a festival. Like
Right. Word, man.
we put blues and bluegrass and rock, and they're like, all these cultures are like, oh, they're not cool and they're not hardcore enough in this. And then to the pop cultures are like, what is all this funny music? I never heard of any of these artists.
Right.
But it's like what we believe in. You know what I mean? It's like it's got to be the essence of this music world or bust. And like this music matters. These people are saying something, and if you see it, undeniable. Like, right? Like you see it, undeniable.
Dude, man, dude, I obviously don't want to splurge on you and make you feel too good, but it was Pickathon was it was an amazing time, dude. It's unreal. I mean, I've never been to a festival where you can see a punk band play at the same time, like, you know, like an hour later, just literally like 200 yards, like 100 yards away, a bluegrass band from Alabama is playing.
Yeah.
It's such a mix, man, dude. Like, I think some of my favorite shows were some of the punk I've seen, because I ain't really been in punk too much recently. And, you know, catching somebody like Dead or Sergeant Papers, like, those bands were unreal. And like Americana Fest is really cool, man. I think, you know, like what y'all are doing is kind of like a more meta postmodern form of what Americana Fest is, where Americana Fest is very oriented towards, you know, whatever kind of thing that Americana, you know, that's the funny thing about Americana is like, what is America? You know, like what exactly?
Yeah.
I heard so many different kinds of music. I was like, there doesn't seem to be a through line for a lot of these, but they're all kind of clumped together, which is still cool, man. But at the same time, musicians who, like, you know, I saw old time musicians, indie folk musicians I admire, and like, you know, like Americana Fest is really cool because you get that opportunity over here. But like, I think about, you know, Pickathon being this opportunity to kind of rub shoulders with this variety and diversity of music going on is very similar to Americana Fest. And I was just like, at Americana Fest, Pickathon was the closest reference point I kind of had to what was going on. Because, I mean, I was also swimming in my soup up there. I was there for like 6 days camping. You know what I mean? Like,
nice.
I was out in Oregon for a while, man. And I think
that's so great. I love that.
Yeah. So it's like I was like deep in it.
That's such a northern. I mean, now I'm like really feeling it. Like, yeah, because I mean, we always thought like, hey, we listen to rap, we listen to blues, we listen to bluegrass, we listen to punk, we listen to this. And if you want like kids, like to like respect it, listen to it, it's like bring it, you know, bring it all together and put it next to each other and kind of like mess up pop culture a little bit, like make you know, makes all that music more valuable to me. Like to have just blues in its little bubble or, you know, just thing kind of like almost makes it gonna die. You know what I mean? You deserve to be right next to like something. It's as punk or as like, I mean, you're sharing this that same kind of like vibe of kind of essence is coming out. And it's kind of stupid in a way, like for us to be doing a festival like this, but it's kind of like from Northern Kentucky perspective, it totally makes sense, right? Like, yeah, like, well, let's mess it all up.
No, dude, I think that's a great way to look at it, man. Like I think about Dead, dude. I was blown away by Dead. I think they played the first night, or was it?
Did you see that on the Paddock stage? That was a clinic. Dude, was that a?
Dude, the lead singer, she had like this shawl on. I was like, what's going, like what? And then like their fucking drummer was like he was like standing up playing like an 808, dude. I was just like, what is going on with this? And they were laying down some of like the hardest fucking, and then the fucking lead guitarist is just like, I don't know where he's from or the vibe, but you know, I don't want to put him on.
Chicago. He's cool.
But like just hip as fuck, just like super cool, playing that like teal guitar, just like a maniac, dude.
I love it. And they had the same feeling. They had the exact same feeling. They were blown away by all the other stuff. And you know what's cool about it is like I remember like my producing partner Ryan, the first show he's seen in years was your show. He was sitting right in front of you at the Lucky Barn. It was one of his favorite things of the whole weekend. You know.
Wait, Ryan, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Did you have he had a beard and you probably had the cowboy hat?
No. Me and Ryan got along really well, man. I like that so a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, this has been an awesome conversation. Like I'm excited. Like we really, like what's in the future for you? Are you like, I mean, are you kind of thinking that you got more like music? I mean, what's going on for you?
Yeah, man, I got a lot of music, kind of like flowing through me right now. But again, I think I'm feeling very very far removed from the people who got on from my label right now, and that's partially to do. I ain't changed, man. I'm the same person that they signed, but the way that they operate is not conducive to honestly originality, just generally speaking. And I'm just kind of looking forward to finding the next route. I want to continue to
Mm,
be sincere while not making the negative. This absolutely wonderful woman named Sarah Brown, a big fan of the label, recently passed away. And I think about that this is before all my plights and gripes had started kind of like started surfacing out of the situation, but I shouldn't take full responsibility because from the top down, it's their responsibility for creating such a toxic environment where it starts to interrupt the ability for their fans to enjoy this stuff unless their musicians get in line like they expect them to do. And
yeah.
I think just going forward, my real desire is to not have to seek no one's permission, no one's
Mm-hmm.
approval, to have
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
to to be able to come out with my own music, which is what I signed up with this record deal thinking I get. But it's been the polar opposite. I feel like I married a megalomaniac. Truth told, man, I really like my in-laws and all the friends I've got and all the friends I've gotten out of the situation, man. I ain't telling you the tea right now, Zale. I'm telling you the truth, and I just hope.
I appreciate it, man. Like it's so refreshing because I think, that's actually gonna matter. That kind of truth is gonna make you want to make more music, and it's gonna connect to more people, and that
Yeah,
story is gonna like be why it works for you, man, because
yeah,
it's on your terms. And like, like I said, we're saying we're both kind of coming at it. Pickathon's not a rich thing. It doesn't make you like we lose
yeah,
money more than we make money, but we're like so committed to this, and like there is something there, and there are people that do love it. It affects people, it changes people's lives. You got that same thing in you, man, and I think they just gotta stick the fuck with it, and it's
yeah.
gonna happen, man. And overcome. Don't give in, man. Like if that shit's happening to you, like you got it. I know it. We're from there. We can persevere, man.
Yeah, man. It's like I think yeah, it's everything's on a scale, and I think the real reason being again I send all my love to G Love, man. I mean that dude is a sage because I remember I really didn't betray any of the stuff that I've been talking about you with because
Hmm.
I think I was still scared.
Hmm.
Truth told, I still is scared, man. Truth told, I'm scared of being blackballed by these folks. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I think there's a certain amount of like, I'm done with this kind of this blood sucking game because like up until very recently, I've had nothing but positive things to say about the music industry and the people who have cohorted around me, who love my music,
Hmm.
who have really
Hmm.
lifted me up out of poverty, truth told. And those
Yeah.
people are the reason why I do everything. They're the ones who set me in the right direction, which comes with all this friction, but I know I'm in the right direction. And I
You
think
are
it's
those.
it's one of those weird things, man, where it's like, people talk a lot about pyramids. People promise you capital G's or, like fancy things or, they want to pay your mortgage, all this kind of stuff. But I think what it boils down to is like, I ain't interested in climbing no pyramid. I ain't interested in trying to take no gold ticket. I'm interested in getting down to the bedrock. I'm looking for the fellas and the people and the women's who's digging out stumps just like me, looking for the roots. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's what I'm after. And
Yeah,
I
man.
think honestly, I think anything that tries to armor anything else, that armor is going to rust. And I don't want to be brought down with some clanking machine that's based off some bad perspective on what this music's about. That I think, in all actuality, reduces the positive experience for both the fans and the people who love music. I mean, dude, it's such a crazy thing. Like like we're like musicians or even the people like folks like you who accommodate the musicians, accommodate the art. Like we're a shaman class, man, and we're a shaman class who has completely lost our purpose within larger society. We used to sing to babies and heal them for the parents. Like we can't.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get caught up in contract deals where people own our images. You know what I mean? And it's I think
Mm-hmm.
it's not, that's never going to change. Simultaneously, I think you definitely got to look at it a punk attitude, and in a deeper level, I think, and maybe this is, man, this is like multiple levels. I feel like we talk about this.
Yeah.
I'd really
Yeah,
love to
for
know your
sure.
perspective on, as like an organizer of these events, because obviously, like, y'all have your ear to the ground when it comes to a lot of these musicians, and
Yeah.
obviously, I'm sure you've had big wigs want to insert themselves into your conversation, and
Yeah.
how you've kind of guided it, or
Yeah.
maybe even been kind of blackballed by these larger these larger.
I mean, they don't know what we're doing. That's kind. I mean, we're kind of like. I mean, I'm a musician too. Like I play mandolin. Like I've been playing mandolin, and when I had kids, I started the festival because I had the festival going. I was actually before kids, but that's like I was gonna have a job. This is what I'm gonna do, and this little hobby turned crazy. But we were blackballed by just everybody because we just weren't pure enough of anything. And I was like, damn it, though, this is the way music should be. It should be like all together, and it should be like as deep as we can go in all these directions. It took us forever to be like, we eventually got into the jazz world. Kamasi Washington's first show was at Pickathon. Like
Yeah,
Sturgill Simpson played 3 shows. He's from Lexington,
yeah,
and actually before he ever was anything, like Tyler played when he had his #1 hit. Billy Strings was like a nobody for a couple years. But you kind of know it. Like when you're in this world, like we are, like we're talking about, like all kinds of musicians today that when you see them, any of those friends that you have and the people we've been talking about, they freaking feel like your life, you just want to hear that. It heals you, like you said. And I just knew, I just have this intuition, maybe call it that kind of like I don't know, dreamer or punk rock thing. Is just like this is the way music festivals should be. Like, we're holding on with dear life not to get sucked in basically because we need to survive into just doing a normal festival that we come because you want to see. It's a shitty place and it's not an experience, and there's not all this other music you're going to discover. It's just this one band that had a hit, and we
yeah.
could do that. Every festival in the universe is a cash machine that's built the same way. Except for, and like we play like a big festival on TV. We like to say like a top 10 festival, but no one knows what we're doing because we're just. But I always say it's so freaking easy. Just go to the heart of all these music and don't be afraid. And it's gotta win. Otherwise, I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah.
And the trick for you is going to be the same it is for all of us, and this is it's just sticking with friends. I mean,
Mhm.
and just longevity. Don't you're going to take a couple knocks. You're going to take some things. You're going to find people that you're like fellow travelers with. It's going to I mean, that community you just talk to, those are all people that are figuring it out in the same way. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like doing it on. Look at Tyler, man. Tyler is big f off to the entire country world. Like he could be headlining Coachella, and I mean Stagecoach. He's not doing any of that stuff. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
all on his terms, and I love that about him. Like that dude's like an authentic freaking dude.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, man. Not that I want kind of like more intrusion from people with big bucks into what you're doing, or bigger
Right.
influence. I look at what Tyler's doing, or in a deeper sense, kind of just like for instance, like I'm trying to get a video out with Western as AF. You've heard of them, haven't you?
Oh yeah, we love those guys.
Well, I was going around Americana Fest, and you'd be surprised by all these Nashvillians pretending like they didn't know what it was. And I think
Eh,
it's curious to me. But it boils down to its ego over it. Like it's not saying Western AF within the Americana root scene, whatever you want to call it. That's like saying you don't know what CBS is, because this is the biggest platform for the music going on right now, along with
yeah.
radio, and along with Gems on VHS. Though that's the trifecta that I think is really moving this genre
Mm-hmm.
forward. And the thing that defines each of them is they are independent. They're run by people who started this out of pure love of wanting to make music and art with friends. And the honest, like the mainstream don't like it, man. I've been getting a lot of, we done this video. My label's telling me, oh, it don't fit our aesthetic or don't whatever. It's like you're telling me that Western AF shot the equivalent of a $20,000 production value video for you for free, and you gave y'all's cats inside Concord $1,000 in a day to do it. Don't damn your eyes if you care about aesthetic. It's ego over there, and I think honestly, it's in a deeper sense within music right now. You got this Russian. I think the majors and people who work within corporate media, there's thousands of people. There's hundreds. There's thousands of people within mainstream music right now trying to figure out what two dudes at Radio West Virginia did with Oliver Anthony, who they just happen to have a decent camera. And I think the reality is that the majors and the companies are losing so much money at this point because the independents are doing so well that they can
Yeah.
no longer sustain pretending they don't know who they are and
Yeah.
pretending to blackball them, and so I'm just trying to get my video out over here. But Easy Eyes never worked with Western AF. Because of their high castle, they've denied that opportunity to many of the artists who work on that label who still haven't gotten the cut that I think they deserve. And I think
We're gonna put you out. We also are in that same world. We're not quite as like focused on like the one style, like because we throw punk rock next to freaking everything, but
right.
we from music festivals, our music festival is the largest content provider. I mean, content creator out there.
Yeah, man.
And I know we recorded some killer stuff with you, and guess what? They already signed off on you coming to the festival that we can release that. So with you.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that y'all haven't had to deal with any red tape. Because
well, we don't know. Maybe they'll come back at it with but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it shouldn't be like that, right? You're the artist. You should be the artist. It shouldn't be this like they're trying to make you a formula. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and it also boils down to like people say they're doing it because they want to protect your opportunity, your bottom line. But the reality is they deny an opportunity without giving you one in return. And that ain't good for nobody but the label itself, because they got to keep up their glass castle. And simultaneously, like the thing about all this as well is like I feel like Pickathon was really curious to me, man, because I remember like I'd go up to Ryan and I'd be like, hey man, like, thanks for letting me like get here. And dude, what I really loved was that every time I go up to somebody and like try to send out like my individual token of appreciation, they'd almost always be like, nah, brah, like that is not how works over here. This we sat down there was a ton of us in a room and we were fighting out trying to figure it out. He was like, a lot of people got you here. It wasn't me, it wasn't any one person. Like this is a community driven thing over here at Pickathon, and that's something that struck me as well. Like no one took responsibility. They gave the responsibility
we're open source, man.
I mean?
And so if I'm loving. I've written down 2 bands. I want more. It's like you know what I mean. Like no one's smart enough to know all what's going on. It's all regional stuff. So it's like you just gotta stay with it, man. And just to give shout out, I first saw you through that Gems on VHS, and I was like, holy shit, he's actually in Covington shooting Cincinnati.
Tony.
Yeah, and I was like, that was magic. And so like, you know what I mean? Like there you go. Like that's what totally. And this year we were really hardcore on, hey man, everybody's got to have something live. And so having that for you really kind of threw the hat in the ring. You know what I mean? And I think your intuition's right. That does good for you, and you should be able to make those calls. And then it's going to be rough and rocky, but I think that with the upswing of all those kind of independent, and Americana is part of it, but I think it's broader. It's just like good, in some weird way, Spotify and all that stuff is like spread the music, kind of broke a little bit of some of the gatekeepers, you know what I mean? Because you can listen to anything now. It's like not hard to listen to like your music. Like, so I know when we put it out there, we're kind of messing up the algorithm on Spotify because so many people's listening to your music that all of a sudden, Nat's showing up on like all these blues lists, just because so many people are listening to you. And I'm like, we love kind of getting in the system and throwing monkey wrenches. We're like,
That's
okay, we'll play your game, but here you go.
I'll use it, because 2 years ago, man, I like, during the pandemic, like nothing was really going for me, man. And I think, like when I first started putting out my hot takes and all that kind of stuff, that initially got me into like companionship, into friendship with folks like Tony or Mike Danger over at Western as Fuck, or Travis and Connie over at La Honda, or even Dan and Tom over at Easy Eye. The thing that really
Hmm.
got me there was like the like since I signed with these guys, there've been a few times where I got asked to go to a dinner of some sort. I never actually had to go any of these dinners, and we still got our way. But I was asked whether or not I would go to dinner with a Spotify editorial playlist or something like that. And that's cool. I'll do whatever I need for my bread and butter. At the same time, I look back on myself. The
Hmm.
me 2 years ago is still so fresh in my mind because I had no idea. I've always wanted to know how music works on the back end. It's like a
Hmm.
mathematician learning his math. I've always wanted to know what's going behind the curtain on stage as well as the business, and
Hmm.
it's just something that's always captivated me. And if you had told me 2 years ago that me applying to the Spotify editorial playlist and their little artist Spotify artist thing, to realize that no, like it's about whether or not you can go to a 4-star restaurant with a Spotify editorial playlist who's like so out of touch with reality that they're living their highfalutin lifestyle. It's
Yes,
discouraging, man. It's really depressing. When you realize that so much of the game really is who you know.
it is. Until you get it on your terms, it's the truth.
Exactly.
And so you just have to like build up enough gravity, and it can come, man. It does exist, and then it's so resilient. Our theory is like once we start like fully selling out and things like that, like I mean, we're already. I know we have changed and kind of had. I mean, the coolest thing we do right now really well is like we bring great music and artists, and all of a sudden they can get take off, right? Like, and
Yeah.
I'm not on hold judgment on it. However, they kind of do their career path. But like Billy Strings is playing 2 nights at the Moda Center here, which is like the
Yeah.
biggest arena, and he's, it's just craziness. And like I love that we can launch people, and as long as they're happy and they're figuring out what their world is, like I'm down.
Yeah.
But by God, if we've got to be like the festival, like every other Lollapalooza, if we just have to regurgitate what Spotify says is the coolest thing, I just, I mean, we're coming from the same place. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that way, and people will fight for you, man. Like once they catch on that and they know that's where you're coming from, you just,
Yeah.
it's awesome. And man, today has been awesome to just chat with you, man. It's been great to kind of connect back to like my hometown and like really I've kind of feel like I figured out what, like,
Why the hell you're doing things the way you're doing them a
yeah,
little bit.
man, it's just so great just to like be like, I was like, oh man, so somebody's like, we're this meant you and me, like we're coming from the same place, and I'm just so, I'm that's what I'm thankful for from like growing up there is like
Yeah.
we can we can like take this kind of weight on and like push through it, and it'll be a good thing. You know what I mean? It's not like stress, right?
Yeah, like within an artist context, man, to caveat what I'm saying, man, it's like, yeah, you can go to these dinners with folkies, but truth told, like it really is bottom rail on top right now. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you can get you with like friends, or like if you can get yourself, I hate calling people fans, man, because it's just like, they're just listeners. It's like fan seems like a derogatory term to me. They're much
Mm-hmm.
more. It's much more. It's like pilgrims or something like that, man. When you really love music, man, and I think when you get people to really get into your pocket, really, to do that marvelous thing that musician does, where you can somehow like it convinces other people who express and have the ability to sing and express these things themselves, look at you and be like, oh, but this person can say it for me in a way I can never can. When these folks are cohorting around you, it
Mm-hmm.
really changes the game because the algorithm does not deny the numbers. Because it when it
Mm-mm.
boils down to it, you can get a song on an editorial playlist just simple off the fact of your own hard work. And when it boils down to it, is like these majors and these companies, they have hundreds of people trying to figure this stuff out, and they still don't know how to do it. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like I think when it boils down to it, um, there's a lot of opportunity in the hands of independents or people who are independently minded who look at the monolith, look at Leviathan, and they're like, "This ain't the whale for me," or rather, "I would love to menace this whale. I would love to whale on top of this whale," like Leroy Jones would say. It's like I think there's a lot of opportunity right now, and again, it's the kind of thing where the majors I think really need to start thinking for themselves because I think a lot of people are losing millions of dollars and they're starting to notice it, and
Mm-hmm.
that boils down to, man, like signing away your masters, like that can no longer be an acceptable thing in my opinion. Like things like that can no longer be acceptable within musicians because
For a little down payment on your record,
yeah.
for 10 grand for making a record. Here you go.
Yeah, man. And I wish, like, yeah, just I think the whole methodology needs to change. The number one thing I hear from like when I've encountered recently this toxic environment I've sort of been kind of having to swim in is people are like, well, that's the way. They're more concerned about you getting hurt, you losing your
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. But it's like, man, like I mean, there's some people who burn so many bridges. If you burn bridges with them, you ain't gonna lose nothing. And I think it's just like going forward, like them folks are going to be on the outside and they're not going to be on the end. And what you doing over at Pickathon, presenting the opportunity for these musicians who are also looking for their opportunity and also looking for just the chance to be in true community. I think festivals or events or artists like that who are willing to get down home like that, those are the ones that are going to continue to get noticed because
Yeah.
for better for worse, Oliver Anthony kind of pointed to me, like I think his song in particular points to the power of the unacknowledged folks of this country, whether or not they be in because of the biases within the top-down corporate structure. The refusal to acknowledge how powerful conservative-minded listeners are and their overwhelming still power within the musical space
Mm-hmm.
is just you can't deny that, and by denying it, you just make it stronger. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
like that principle or that ideology, it's partially the segregation that's going on within music, generally speaking, is just so wild. Like I've hanging out with my good friend Rory. Have you ever heard of Milo Raphael? You
No.
ever heard of his music?
No.
You should, in my opinion. But Rory talking about just like he's black and proud, man. Like him talking about he's getting into the blues. He performs under Crow Billiken. Just I was talking with him the other day. He's like man. I want to do a blues thing. I want to do I want to do things. He's like where no white people involved, man. He's like that the way that the current state of affairs is so I don't know. Things are just so whitewashed across the board. And I think there just needs to be a greater acknowledgement and bring it out of the normal demographics because despite all the calls, there's more. Despite all this prosperity, despite all these kind of things, you go over to Beverly Hills and you tell me if there's want in this country. And the truth
Mm-hmm.
is, there's more want than there's ever been. The towers are higher, the opportunities are fewer, and I think
Mm-hmm.
there's just so many people who are looking for that opportunity to experience something diverse, to be able, like I was talking with Evan earlier, just like being able to shake hands with the people one meets and being able to acknowledge different perspectives on life is just such a rare opportunity nowadays. And we need to continue to find ways to break down the barriers that primarily rich people with bullshit political opinions keep throwing us up. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
one of the big human problems, man. It's just like we're all susceptible to slogans. You know what I mean? We're all
Yeah.
susceptible to simple sayings, and the more and more we realize that it ain't race so much as it's a class struggle in this country. It ain't us versus them as it is like all of us versus these folks, and realizing like only a
Yeah.
very, very small percentage of people are the one causing the furore, and we're all down here on the ground like a bunch of ants running in a circle till we get exhausted, not even realizing that the queen's a termite, ain't even in our hive. And it's like it's like one of them kind of circumstances, man. I think
I mean, it's break it down is to kind of like break out. Like, I mean, I feel like if some folks like us, certain musicians have enough gravity, you start to break the system down. You know what I mean? Like, because it's hard to like co-opt that. Like, if your whole thing, not based on that formula of like the well-worn path of what people want you to make that money, then it's way more valuable and harder to like co-opt, because now it's on your own terms.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's on terms that doesn't follow that formula. And I think it's just like hard people. I mean, good people connecting, like these conversations, like more people like doing their thing, like more support for like believing. I love those guys in Sergeant Papers. Like, those guys are warriors out of like Mexico City. Like they don't got a label. They don't get nothing. They drove up here in their car from Mexico, from like northern Mexico, and camped. You know what I mean? They're like, it's like it's SG. It's all those people. Like, I think that cohort is gonna like we're gonna make a difference. That's my belief.
Yeah, man. No, that's such a great point. I think I got nothing to. You hit the nail on the head there, Bubba.
So it's kind of like we're calling it, but I know I hear you too. Like, there's a weird, like, we're both like optimistic in that way. Like, we're gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like, and it's gonna work, and we're gonna like damn that that kind of system that's like trying to like force everything into that same thing. Like, your music doesn't really exist anymore in a way. Like, but look, dude, you're just like blowing people away with music that you're playing today. You know what I mean? That like pretty much like the music industry wouldn't touch because it died out like in pre-World War. You know what I mean? But it doesn't matter because it's so fucking good. It doesn't matter, and it's what's coming out of you. And so like it's like that optimism and that punk rock, it's gonna win, dude. And I'm, I think
like I feel like any good mole, man. I'm just exploiting the gap right now, man. I'm just exploiting the gap, and it's just like the gaps keep getting bigger too, man. So it's just like,
we're not. It's gonna be the end of it for us, man. We're gonna talk more. Like, I know our paths are gonna cross, but like.
Bo, absolutely. I mean, we can't be Northern Kentucky cousins, man, without
I'll probably have to come back just to hang there now since I have friends. So like, yeah, man, it's been a real pleasure having you on today. And thank you for this conversation.
Zale, it's much reciprocated, man. And I don't know, I don't want to condescend on kind of like what sort of any pressure or dynamics you're sort of dealing on the back end, but I did find it cynically humorous how everybody I talked to about the event was always worried, like, is this going to be the last one? Is this going to be the last one, man? And it was just like, and also understanding from folks that like that's kind of been a sort of other shoe within the conversation for a long time, I guess. And
yeah, man,
I think at the same time, like, damn the rise, man. Like, you're gonna stick around.
So. We are, man, one way or another. Whether if we have to have it in my damn backyard, we're still gonna still do it. But yeah, man, there's lots there, and I really, just talking to you is giving me a lot more like faith in that whole mentality. Because it's like, you just gotta hear it from other people too, going through their own journeys. And like, it just, like, I just gonna double down. That's my whole thing here. Double down. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And if if somebody starts trying to play a poker game, just be like, well, I ain't part of your game, partner. I'm going straight to the house. Like, I ain't.
Awesome.
Like, you want to play 21? Well, this is podcast 22. Like, take a step outside, man.
It is. This is, and yes, with that, I want to thank you. This is the end of Pickathon Podcast, episode 22. This is probably one of my favorite conversations to date. I can't even. I feel like you're I know we're from the same place. You can tell. People listen to us. So
I'm sort of biased all the other people we talk to, man. Yeah, or you talk to, just because it's like, oh man, yeah, you're from back home, man. So
I am, man. Awesome. And with that, we'll see you guys next week for podcast episode 23. Thank you.
Yo, thanks so much, Zale.
You've been listening to the Pickathon Podcast. This podcast is produced by Zale Schoenborn, Tanner McCullough, and Evan Throckmorton. Our artwork is by Travis Bone, and additional support by Ryan Stiles. The music you heard in this episode was by our guest of honor, Nat Myers. The songs included were Yellow Peril, No Pistol Sigh, or No Pistol Blues, and the one we're riding out on right now, Pray for Rain. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to tell your friends about where they can get on the Pickathon bandwagon. Thank you to the whole Pickathon family. And like Zale said, we'll catch you all next week.
Don't be no more raising king. We both pray for rain.